Banditos gather round. So you're probably wondering, is the Division 2 Season 2 actually worth my time? Or are we just spinning our wheels here? Well, that's what I'm here to help you decide today. Season 2 just dropped, and with it, a lot of expectations, and even more surprises. Some good, some, well, let's just say you'll see what I mean. Today we're diving deep into the good, the bad, and the downright ugly parts for a complete review of what this season shakeup has brought us so far. Quick heads up, if you're here expecting pure hype, this might not be the video for you. But if you're looking for an unfiltered take on where this season really stands, both the highs and the lows, then stick around. This one's about to get juicy. Let's do this.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
This isn't the guide, it's a review. If you're looking for the Season 2 survival guide, I've already got that covered right here. Now, just so we're clear, I'm passionate about this game, and I'm even more passionate about the community we've built around it. I want nothing more than to see the Division thrive. But that also means I don't shy away from calling out the rough spots. If you're here looking for someone to play PR for the devs, that's not this video. I keep it real, and sometimes that means calling out what could be better. So here's the deal. We're going to give you the full rundown on the state of the game in Seasons 2.0. From the great new features to the stuff that makes you go, really? This is what they thought would be fun? Yeah, we're going to cover it all. This video is going to help you decide if diving back in is worth your time and your grind. Now, let's set the stage for where things stand with the Division 2 today. First, it's been a long time since we've got any major new content, specifically since Paradise Lost with Title Update 19 about a year ago. Then on May 15th, 2024, Ubisoft canceled the Division Heartland, their free-to-play project. That one hurt. And then they redirected resources not to the Division 2, but to their other big title, X-Defiant. At Ubisoft Forward, in June, we were promised some hype around the Division. Well, it didn't even make the main show. Instead, it got a post-show announcement that the game would adopt a seasonal character model, meaning players would start fresh each season. Naturally, the community didn't exactly celebrate this shift. And it wasn't the only news. Just a couple of months later, Ubisoft stock dropped to a 10-year low. Then on September 21st, they announced the Division 3 is now in development over at Massive Entertainment. Quite a year for the Division fan base, to say the least. But back to the seasonal character model. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. The community reaction? Intense, with a lot of players publicly announcing they're uninstalling the game in protest. In response, the devs made a rare move. They walked it back, deciding to rework Seasons 2.0 to remove the seasonal character requirement. And that's how we entered Year 6, Season 1, with the game in a rough state. The past two seasons have been underwhelming at best. We've seen low-tier gear, disappointing exotics, and manhunts reduced to brief audio clips tacked onto old activities we've run into the ground. I've played this game through the toughest times, but Season 1 saw my lowest hours logged yet. I didn't even buy the Season Pass or spend a dime on cosmetics. So you would understand if the player base was a little desperate for content, and that could influence players' feelings about it. Things got even shakier with the Season 2 PTS, which is the public test server. It was rolled out to PC players only, as usual, and feedback from those who got in was mostly positive, with creators largely giving it praise. But with the PTS came another surprise, another weapon and gear rebalance, which is just a nice way of saying a bunch of buffs and nerfs. And the community favorites got targeted nerfs. For many who held out through the seasonal character debacle, this was the final straw. And now that brings us to the launch of Seasons 2. So we'll be focusing on Seasons 2.0, which introduces the new seasonal framework going forward. This season revolves around key features including scouts, the season pass, journeys, priority objectives, events, and modifiers. Let's talk modifiers. There's a lot to unpack here. So were you told these were optional? Spoiler, they're not. By the time you reach the fourth mission in the journey, using modifiers becomes mandatory to progress. And even if you have modifiers turned off, when you matchmake if someone else has theirs on, the enemies will still be modified. So you'll need to turn yours on too. The devs plan to let the session leader control whether mods are enabled, but this is going to complicate matchmaking. Expect some players to drop from your group when modifiers aren't their vibe. They could add a filter for matchmaking, but the player base is too small to split up, which could lead to long wait times. Honestly, the best solution would be making modifiers so undeniably fun and useful that nobody minds. Right now, though, that's not happening. As it stands, modifiers are supposed to bring in more of that gameplay overlord experience the devs mentioned. And hey, I love that shift, but these modifiers need to be better balanced to succeed in that role. Let's talk about what using them actually feels like. You start with a global modifier buff that amps up your damage at ranges, and you begin grinding for passive modifiers right away. But active modifiers, the real game changers, take a long grind to unlock. And meanwhile, enemies are already fully boosted. These aren't your average NPCs. They're even spongier than before and can drain your armor with a few hits. There's an enemy modifier called stellite coating that adds an armored shell which you can only efficiently clear at a specific distance. Basically, they took an already spongy enemy and made them spongier. Bad move. The most frustrating modifier? The unlimited special ammo for enemies. Whole squads can have shock rounds at long range and fire rounds up close, both of which pop you out of cover even if you're blind firing, and the duration is so long that it often leads to stun lock cycle where you're completely disabled and then just dead. I've been in groups where one NPC with shock ammo wiped us out while we were in cover. It's baffling that this made it through the PTS, especially since stellite coating got nerfed before launch. And then there's requital. This is a modifier that actually lets you kill yourself by hitting enemies that are in the mid-range. This one adds a layer of complexity, causing you to pause before you pull the trigger on any enemy. And yes, there are bugs. Sometimes enemy modifiers don't display, so you might shoot a requital enemy by mistake and end up hurting yourself. Or enemies pulsed by a decoy have their distance indicator colors mixed up, leading to misreads. And if you log out, your mods often reset. Let's just say my first impression wasn't awesome. I waited to post this review thinking the experience might improve once I unlocked everything. But even after grinding through, some things like shock ammo are still a huge pain. The silver lining, I actually like agent modifiers. Once you unlock them, you feel truly powerful, and they open up a ton of interesting builds. If you're into tinkering, this adds a whole new level of customization. But you'll need patience. The modifiers are confusing, the descriptions lack clarity, and the enemy mods are downright frustrating. Even with 20 to 25 hours logged in Season 2.0, some modifiers still make me think twice before equipping. So how does the experience change as you progress? At first, all you notice are the enemy modifiers and how punishing they are. But as you unlock more of your own modifiers, the balance starts to shift in your favor until you get shocked as a reminder of how punishing they can still be. That's a big problem for first impressions. Players feel weaker at the start, and with modifiers adding complexity, some endgame builds and mechanics, like the Umbra gear set, becomes less attractive because you're too busy figuring out which modifier you're facing to worry about your own build's mechanics. It gets complicated. Too much mind.
Too many mind. Mind sword. Mind enemy. Too many mind. No mind. No mind.
And the system gets even more convoluted by overlapping with directives. They could simplify this by folding the XP and targeted loot bonus from directives into the modifier system and then calling it a day. Plus, we need more rewards for putting up with the enhanced enemies. Here's the thing. Who are these modifiers really for? When designing a feature, you have to think about the target user. Over the past couple of years, the division has shifted to make things more welcoming for new and casual players, and they succeeded. New players poured in, but these modifiers, they're definitely not for the newbies. I've been playing since day one, and even I find them complex and kind of exhausting to manage. Scouts technically replaces manhunts, but in practice, it still feels like a manhunt, just with a new name that's added some confusion. And it's business as usual, with the story focus being a prime target named Theo. Strangely, it's still listed under the Manhunts tab, making the transition a bit fuzzy. Now, Scouts did receive an overhaul. Previously, we unlocked one target each month and had to complete a list of familiar activities to reach them. It was formulaic. Knock out each target, grab your loot and collectible, then move on. In some seasons, we got altered missions for these targets, which added some excitement. But this time, with Scouts, it's just Theo. No list of sub-targets or revamped missions leading up to him. So far, the activities are the same as before, just minus any mission reworks and other interesting targets. What's actually different with Scouts is the story pacing and reward structure. Instead of 5 targets spaced across 4 drops, we get a weekly dose over 14 weeks. Each Scout encounter kicks off with a riddle, which you have to solve to determine the next activity. In week 1, for example, there were 3 Scouts, taking about an hour total to complete. After that, it's a waiting game until the following week. These are all time-gated. At the end of the Scout chain, we'll unlock the season's climax mission, which promises a new difficulty tier between heroic and legendary, with mechanics similar to the Paradise Lost incursion. Completing it will also grant the 3rd exotic weapon in this season's lineup. So, while the framework has changed, the core gameplay feels familiar. So Scouts are definitely lighter than before, more bite-sized, with what feels like a bigger payoff at the end. When Yannick mentioned rebalancing the seasonal delivery to lean less on story and more on combat, I assumed he meant within the Scouts themselves. Now though, it's clear he was talking about the season overall, with the real focus shift happening in the modifiers. Previously, each season's draw was the manhunt target and the gear, but now the hype centers strongly around these modifiers. In that sense, Scouts aren't truly new content, more of a reformatting of the manhunts we know. But the climax mission, at least, looks to be actual new content with added mechanics and a new difficulty level. It's still set in a familiar territory, but I'm actually okay with that since it gives us more endgame replayability, which, let's be honest, we desperately need. Will I enjoy the climax mission? Hard to say, especially since we have to wait until the season's end to find out. That part seriously bugs me. But that raises the question, why isn't it part of the journey? More on that in a bit. The time gating to get to the climax mission is frustrating. I get that they want to avoid story spoilers on day 1, but it makes it feel like the real new content for season 2 doesn't actually arrive until we're almost in season 3. If the climax mission delivers and is worth replaying, then let us have it up front in the season. It could be a great addition, but having to wait so long to access it feels like a drag. Many games offer new story along with seasons, and we get to experience the full quest right away. That has never felt like a bummer to me. All that said, I do like the overall new structure of Scouts. The riddles and bite-sized activities are a solid idea, and the UI design looks great. The rewards are decent too, but this would be so much more exciting if they could front-load the content, letting us dig into the meat of it a lot sooner. But Scouts alone isn't going to bring any new players or drive players back, but the climax mission being so far out might actually work against the system. You could just log in at the end of the season, do all the Scouts back to back, and jump right into the actual new content you really wanted to play. The season pass got a glow up. Design-wise, they've modernized it. It's in line with what we see in other games, but the execution, oh boy, where do we start? So the season pass now has 3 tiers: free, premium, and premium plus. Cue a wave of confusion. A lot of players ended up buying both the premium and premium plus passes, not realizing premium plus is just premium with a few extra perks like level skips, unique apparel, and some premium credits. Here's the problem. Premium Plus isn't really a pass level. It's a bundle. They should have promoted it that way. Since they didn't, the devs had to issue refunds to people who overpurchased. Never screw up monetization. Ugh. And then there's the bug. Players are hitting level 100 in the pass within hours, which means anyone who paid extra for Premium Plus got shorted since they didn't even need those level skips. Honestly, I was a little glad for the bug because the default leveling pace is painfully slow. I mean, turtle. And because it's The Division, they couldn't resist adding complexity. Previously, we leveled up our SHD by earning XP, which also advanced the season pass. Not anymore. Now there's a separate season XP grind, and not every activity gives you this XP. So while you're not totally forced into specific activities, you'll find certain content gives way more XP than others. Reward-wise, it's pretty standard with a few new perks like free apparel and premium credits. Some rewards we're used to seeing in the past are now scattered across the new Journey tab. Then there's the season events calendar. Doesn't it look a little light? Some of that's because the scouts, which replaced manhunts, are now in their own tab, and there are no leagues this time around. Honestly, I'm glad about that. Leagues feel stale, but they seem to be recycling the same old global events over and over. But where's Reanimated? We all love that one. Nowhere in sight. The XP events are a nice addition. The community's been asking for more ways to earn XP, and they're finally delivering here. Bugs are everywhere this season. Some are so bad that there really should have been emergency patches, or at least some official comms acknowledging the issue and promising fixes ASAP. To their credit, I did see a pop-up about the apparel bug. I won't go into it, but it was refreshing to see the devs using in-game notifications to communicate directly with us. On the surface, the journey and priority objectives look like fresh content. The journey offers 7 missions, each with 8 objectives. But here's the thing, the missions, they don't actually exist. They're just there to break up a long list of familiar objectives and rewards into sections with some progression. It's basically one big checklist of in-game activities. Now don't get me wrong, I like the idea of giving players structure and rewards around specific goals. But don't we already have projects for that? They've missed an opportunity here to make each mission feel unique, maybe even weave in some story or mystery as you progress. The one unique feature of Journey, it's how you unlock the active modifiers. But unlocking these is a heavy grind. I get that the devs didn't design them to be completed on day one, but here's the problem. The modifiers fundamentally change gameplay. Enemies start fully buffed with their modifiers, but you have to unlock yours, which puts you at a disadvantage. So naturally, players want to power through the journey to even the playing field, and that's where the grind really starts to feel unfair. Now, priority objectives. These give rewards for completing activities. Same activities we've already been doing. Sound familiar? Yep, it's basically projects with a new coat of paint. But honestly, I'm a fan. We should have had this system ages ago. It's a smarter way to do projects. They're ongoing, they added some structure, and the rewards are fantastic. Exotics XP, and the only way to unlock passive modifiers. The objectives come encrypted, adding a nice touch of mystery and a bit of gamble. But here's the kicker. We now have scouts, projects, journey, and priority objectives. And all of these feel too close in concept. They're all just a list of activities. My take? Projects should be phased out. Meanwhile, the journey and scouts should be merged into a single system. It feels weird that the climax mission isn't unlocked at the end of the journey. This just needs a bit of rework to feel like more than just 3 massive checklists. All in all, the state of the game is not great with Season 2.0's release. The bugs and enemy mods need urgent adjustment. Turning mods off isn't a solution either, since it cuts you off from group play and the journey, and from a lot of content. Unless you're a solo legendary fan, maybe you'll manage. But for everyone else, these issues are frustrating. So my take, if you're an experienced player craving something new, you might end up enjoying the modifiers once you're past the initial hurdles. Nothing in Seasons 2.0 is truly new content aside from the climax mission we've yet to experience and the modifiers you have to grind for. But those do add enough to keep things fresh, I gotta say, until the DLC and the Division 3 come along. For new players though, these mods will likely be a struggle, and if you've been frustrated with the Division 2's development and community management, this patch probably won't change your mind. My recommendation, don't feel pressured to dive in right away, but keep a close eye on the progress because these are interesting. With 120-day seasons, you've got time. Wait for a patch to address the major bugs before jumping back in. I think they've got something promising here. They really do, but it's on them to make it work. The ball is in their court, and only they can screw this up. So if they can nail this, it could bring some much needed fun back to the Division 2. I am actually enjoying this season, but I remain cautiously optimistic and will continue to put out guides to help you every step of the way. Thank you for hanging out with me today. My name is Tuxedo Bandido. That's Tito Bandido. Bandido.
What's crack-a-lackin'?
And this was another episode of The Division 2. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, like, and turn on notifications to ensure you don't miss out on the fantastic experiences waiting for you in The Division 2. And if you like builds like this, check out the recommended build video I have here for you. If you have anything you want to see covered, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And thank you to all the channel members and donors who make everything possible. Tux Nation wouldn't be without you.
When you buy a game from Ubisoft, enter the creator code Tuxedo Bandido to support the channel. Easy peasy. Now maybe this cheapskate can afford to sign me up for that dating app I've had my eyes on.
Follow me.
I get it.